Bethesda shadow-dropped a remaster of Oblivion. What? Many people immediately jumped to get the game, and no one can deny the popularity of what happened, but now that the initial hype and emotions are slowly starting to cool down, let's actually take a look at Oblivion Remastered to see what went well, what went wrong, who's unhappy with the shadow drop, and whether asking that much money for a 20-year-old game makes sense. Oh, and I have an idea for a pretty surprising The Elder Scrolls VI connection with launching that remaster. Let's go through it one by one though. If you're following gaming a bit more closely, you already knew about the idea of a remastered Oblivion for some time. During a case of FTC versus Microsoft regarding acquisition of Activision, internal Microsoft documents were made, well, let's say public, and they referenced an Oblivion remaster that was supposed to be released in the 2022 fiscal year. Everything went quiet for a while, but just last week people found in-game images of the remaster on Virtuoso's website, and they are the ones who co-developed this game with Bethesda. On Tuesday we got a brief video talking about the development, and then the game was announced to be available immediately. You could purchase it on PC, PS5 and Xbox consoles, unless you're subscribed to Game Pass, so you got it for free. We'll come back to the pricing of the game a bit later. Now, was that launch a success? Definitely. Let me use the data on active players from Steam to show that, even though, yes, I'm aware that if the game is on Game Pass and on Steam, that's not a complete picture. Oblivion Remaster reached number 1 in top sellers, and just recently the game peaked at over 182,000 players on Steam. For context, let's compare it to other recent releases. Atomfall, a little over 6,000 players. Avowed, another day 1 Game Pass release, a bit over 19,000 players at the same time, and it comes from Obsidian, so a pretty good studio. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, 256,000 players. This year's Like a Dragon, 22,000. The unbeatable Monster Hunter Wilds, 1,384,000 players. Crazy number. And to compare it to a previous release in the series, Skyrim peaked with 287,000 players. And now compare that to those 182,000 players who jumped to buy an almost 20-year-old game immediately as it was announced and released. That's a really good result. Bethesda and Microsoft can be pretty happy with that, although not everyone is happy about the shadow drop. I came across a post on X by Michał Mielcarek, CEO of Draw Distance, who argued that shadow dropping a game like this basically takes all the attention away from other games that worked really hard to plan their own marketing to happen around that time. And it's not only about the fact that games might or might not have similar audiences that need to spend their money on the game. The other thing is the attention of the players, the creators, and the media who are suddenly covering this topic instead of another game, a smaller game from an unknown IP that is trying their best at the time. I know for a fact that internal coverage plans for other games were scrapped in some media teams because all hands on Oblivion was called. And yeah, I'm making this video instead of something else I was already working on because this is the popular topic. Obviously, this talk surrounds the release of Clair Obscur Expedition 33, the game from a small French team who are releasing their first big title on the 24th of April, just 2 days after Microsoft dropped a bomb on gamers. Funnily enough, Microsoft is also bringing this game day 1 to Game Pass, and it is an important release for them since they've been promoting it heavily. Luckily for the devs from Sandfall Interactive, reviews for Expedition 33 are out and the average score is at 92, so this should still keep some buzz around their game. The issue is that this game now has to compete for the attention of creators who just started playing Oblivion for their audiences, and Oblivion is really heavy on memes and funny stuff happening because of its clunkiness and underlying creation engine usual shenanigans.
I heard that thieves broke into the Arcane University, the Imperial Legion compound, and the temple all on the same night. Wait a minute, let me do that one again. I heard that thieves broke into the Arcane University.
So as a creator, you can either play a game that's really heavy with the narrative, tackling darker themes and making you think a bit more, or you can play Oblivion that's much more entertaining and plays on nostalgia.
I love dogs. Doesn't everyone? You too.
And I think I know what gets more attention, seeing that Oblivion yesterday topped at almost 500,000 viewers on Twitch, while Clair Obscur Expedition 33 right now has around 25,000 viewers. And the game is actually great. Now, I do not completely agree with the CEO of Draw Distance. I'm pretty sure shadow dropping games is not inherently bad. Releasing Hi-Fi Rush worked for Microsoft. Well, even though they later closed the studio that made the game. I agree, however, with the issue of timing. Microsoft was well aware that Clair Obscur is releasing in just 2 days and moving a release date of Oblivion that no one officially knew anything about to, 2-3 weeks later or so. That would make sure that people's attention is not suddenly diverted elsewhere, and yet they decided that releasing a game right now, next to a game that they want to succeed since they paid for it to be in Game Pass on launch, makes a lot of sense. But I'm sure someone thought it's a good idea. Is it though? And here I can use a similar example to what Mielcarek mentioned on X. Imagine that Take-Two carefully planned the release of Mafia: The Old Country. They announced it beforehand, the time is almost there, and suddenly Rockstar, that works with the same publisher, shadow drops GTA 6, out of nowhere. Obviously, Mafia devs would be pissed, and you can't argue that bigger titles, especially when they're released like this, they create this huge hype wave, and it makes people buy these things immediately, focusing their attention there completely. And like I mentioned in the dedicated GTA 6 video, publishers and developers are really cautious with releasing games next to GTA 6 because they know what this release will do to players and their wallets. So yeah, I don't think releasing Oblivion like this is bad, but the timing could definitely be much better. Mielcarek wasn't the only one to point that out yesterday, as X was full of people saying that gamers should not completely forget about Clair Obscur being just around the corner. Theoretically, this is just a single case, but misjudged release dates are not unusual in this industry, especially if you remember Call of Duty, Battlefield, and Titanfall releasing within just 1 month. Now, let's talk about the price. Does the remaster itself justify the price point of the game, which is currently set at $50 for the standard edition and $60 for the deluxe edition? The remaster modernizes the original game mostly in terms of visuals because the game is made on Unreal Engine 5 to improve the graphics, while it still relies on Creation Engine for elements like physics or combat. There's ray tracing now, updated textures and models, NPC's AI has been improved, obviously the controls have been redesigned to be compatible with what games do right now, especially on current generation of consoles. Also, the game is packed with all the expansions and DLCs that the game originally had. So we have a sort of complete edition that was also reworked into something more modern, and graphically the progress is huge. It generally sounds and looks like a pretty decent value. You get all the upgrades, the originally paid expansions, and then you have the fact that it immediately went to #1 in Steam top sellers. Sure, you can argue that the original game costs $15 and $20 is required for a deluxe edition, and then again you can get it even cheaper if you wait for a sale, the deluxe edition priced as low as $4. However, you then don't get all the fancy, shiny new things. And let's be honest, if you were interested in Oblivion, you already have it anyway. Having a price point of $50 for this game also seems pretty fair, especially when you take a look at other remasters released in the last few years and their prices. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, $50 for a much smaller upgrade. Diablo 2 Resurrected was $40 for a substantial update. The Legendary Edition of Mass Effect that contained 3 games was $60, and the level of upgrade depended on the game that was included. A lot of playtime. That was a pretty good deal. Mafia Definitive Edition, which is actually often considered a remake of the first game, was $40. So if you consider that Oblivion is now releasing in the era of most AAA games being priced at $70, the price isn't really a negative surprise, it looks pretty normal. Besides, you can also get it in Game Pass, so if you don't mind not owning the game and if you just want to play through it, you'll get a month of Game Pass for a lower price than those $50. So what are the impressions of the game by the players? Is Oblivion Remaster any good? Well, yeah, but I'm interested in what exactly are the positives and what are the negatives that people highlight. If you look at Steam reviews, the game currently has 82% positive feedback with over 10,000 reviews left by the players, and that's a properly good score. People in their reviews reminisce about the good old days of playing Oblivion for the first time. They praise the visuals of the remaster and generally the changes made to the game while also staying faithful to the original from 2006. My favorite review is, "It's the Elder Scrolls, but it doesn't feel shitty and clunky. Surprisingly great, way better than you would expect from Bethesda." And I think I know where that last part is coming from, keeping in mind how stuck they are with Creation Engine. How about the negatives though? Well, the most apparent complaint at the top of my reviews is that a single-player game uses anti-cheat and has EULA dictating that you can't make or share mods for the game. Obviously, people now expect the Creation Club with Bethesda's own paid mods to come to bring additional income. And keeping in mind how Skyrim lives till this day because of the modding community, it's a really bad move. Still, we need to keep in mind that this game is not simply made on Creation Engine, but it utilizes Unreal Engine 5, so there's no tried and tested set of tools to make the mods on the scale of what other Bethesda games had up until now. Still, a bummer. The next big thing is the performance of the game. Players report inconsistent frame rates, stuttering, big frame drops especially in the open world and in the cities, and all of that on strong hardware. And it's not that surprising when the studio uses UE5 for the game with all its bells and whistles. Obviously there are reports of typical Bethesda bugs, AI issues, regular graphical glitches, occasional crashes and freezes. But wait, does this mean that this game could benefit from spending a bit more time on the optimization? Well, that's a first for Bethesda surely. It never happened to them before. And look, then the game would not be released next to another game that Microsoft is promoting. What a coincidence would that be? Now, jokes aside, looking at the reviews, I think the shadow drop might have actually influenced the positive reception a bit. I'm not saying the game is not worth the praise, don't get me wrong, but if we have reviews that often mention the nostalgia and not the actual remaster, and they are posted without a significant playtime, then it's just an approval of what Bethesda did and not how it did it. So I'm really curious how the reception of the game will change in a week's time, for example, or when people will play it for 30 or 40 hours before posting a review. Hopefully it holds up the positive trend. One thing that kept me wondering all this time is why the remaster is being made on a new engine. Why release this remaster in the first place? Well, reading recently about what Bohemia Interactive did with Arma Reforger, this game being basically a testing ground for the new engine and the technical improvements before releasing Arma 4, well, what if Bethesda is actually doing something similar? The Elder Scrolls VI was announced to be built on Creation Engine 2, the same engine that Starfield is using, but it's still just an upgrade to the tech that Bethesda has been using since Skyrim in 2011. And if you played Starfield, you know that the new engine makes things look better, you can actually use ladders now, but it's still the same old tech with all its quirks. Now, what if the plans for the Elder Scrolls VI actually changed? What if it's not only the Creation Engine 2, but they actually field-tested mixing their own tech with Unreal Engine 5 to handle different things in the game by building the remaster of Oblivion? As I mentioned, here we have the visuals handled by UE5, while physics and the other elements are handled by Creation Engine. Bethesda could have just given the task to their developers to acquire new skills in a new engine by rebuilding a previous game before tackling the production of the Elder Scrolls VI in a new manner with newly acquired knowledge. I mean, I am putting a huge foil hat on my head here, but I can't shake the feeling that there's something more about this project than just releasing a remaster of a beloved game. And here you'd have a training course for your devs that the studio is actually paid for by the gamers. I don't know, just a thought I had. Tell me what you think about all of this. Is there any merit to the point that Oblivion might have this connection to the upcoming new The Elder Scrolls game? And if you're playing the game yourself, what are your thoughts on the remaster? Do you like it, or maybe you're not happy with it at all? I hope to see you in the comments. Thank you for watching, and take care.